Alrighty, folks. One of the things I wanted to do today is check in with Dana, the CEO of Hemlane. She was obviously at the ORAD event year number 2, but I actually wanted to come at this with a very different perspective. As the CEO of a software company, SaaS company, she does participate in events. She does look at marketing budgets. She does look at ROI and things of that nature. So I was going to ask her, what did she think of the event? What does she like, not like? What she changed? Just wanted to get some feedback from a professional in this space. How you doing, Dana?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. And I have a lot of strong opinions on it, and how this event is unlike any other one. So the one rental at a time annual event, it happens during the 3-day weekend. And so I want to go into those from also from a vendor perspective and how it benefits the audience and those going to the conference to have it how one rental at a time does. But I do want to kind of back up and just talk about overall venue and the cadence with it. One, by the time you get to a 3-day conference, everyone is exhausted. That third day, no one's listening. Everyone's thinking about their flight home. And so, one thing I really do love about the one rental at a time annual event is that one, it's a celebration of what you've accomplished year over year. So I loved hearing from certain individuals where they started last year when I spoke with them and where they are today.
Yeah.
But two, that it's a 2-day conference, but it's on a 3-day weekend. So we're not asking you to take time off your W-2 to attend the event. Or when I say we, I mean one rental at a time, not me, but one rental at a time.
I
You're
get it.
not asking for folks to take extra time off of work, which I actually think is important.
Mm-hmm.
And then two, I think the cadence of it, of having it as a 2-day event, is really, really helpful because you get all the content in and all the key takeaways and meet as many people in 2 days without it feeling exhausting. And so the sentiment by the last day was people wish that it hadn't ended. And then I think everyone went out to socialize afterwards. And that's a good sign because
Yeah.
every single other event I've been to, by the third day, everyone's like running out. And so I think that part of it's good. The other thing I really like about it is the venue. And so one thing I was talking to actually with your production studio group who was there, they're phenomenal, was really that a lot of events are in these conference calls, these conference halls that are really
Mm-hmm.
cookie cutter. And
Yeah.
I actually really like the venue because it's very open. It's very bright, which is very inviting for conversations. It's not like this dark conference room with like low ceilings and just like a bunch of chairs lined up, old chairs. It's very inviting. It's very inspirational. And then I also loved the kind of flow of it, that people could go outside and have a little break room or into the area where people were having lunch. During the lunch breaks, everyone was together. And so you were at a different table every single time meeting someone new. So
Yeah.
that's kind of like the first part of it that I want to bring up, that just props to you on that, Michael. I heard a lot of compliments on the venue and everything else. Um, Go for it.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, one of the important things for me, and I'm glad you picked up on it, was to do it on a 3-day weekend for that purpose, because I was a W-2 employee, and I knew that, I didn't want to have to take a day off work or whatever that is to go do this. So I would probably, have to sneak out before the end of Sunday to get home so I could go to work on Monday. So
Mhm.
yeah, and then it's like, what 3-day weekend, right? Is it Memorial Day? Probably a horrible option, right? Is it late? It's a horrible option, right? Because it's the end of the big. So President's Day just feels like the right one to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're so right. If you had this start on a Friday, everyone would be on their Slack, on their phone, checking their Slack messages and checking their work emails, being like, shoot, I have to catch up on this because otherwise Monday will
Yeah.
be harder. And so I think it was nice because Saturday and Sunday, you obviously get fewer emails. You don't get as many work related items and things that are in your mind. Okay, so that's the first one, the first part. The second thing I want to talk about is the vendor side. Most of the conferences that I have attended, there is truly, so everyone has an intention behind the conference of what they're trying to get out of it. They're either trying to um, sell their turnkey properties.
Mhm.
So say, hey, I'm a turnkey provider. Come here, and the whole flow goes like that. So it starts with, this is why you should be purchasing real estate right now. And then it goes to, great, and here's who you're going to purchase from, and by the way, we get a cut back from it. um, that's a lot of the ones that I've seen.
Mhm.
And then the second one that I see is someone looking to do something like, hey, I'm trying to myself maximize money off this conference, and so what I'm going to do is have a ton of vendors and just sell for them. And they know the vendors are the ones who are paying for the conference. And so what they're trying to do is get as many in there as much as possible. And then have those vendors obviously have find value, so they keep paying them. And
Mhm.
it doesn't go back to the roots that I think One Rental at a Time really has, and everyone there has, is just education. Hey, we're going to educate you. We're going to tell you what's going good with the market, but we also have economists that are going to tell you what's going bad with the market. And everything is going to be much more realistic about what you're going to encounter, because, hey, I'm Michael. I've been there. I've had
Mhm.
a W-2. I've gone through this process. It's hard at the beginning. It's not all rosy, shiny, get rich quick. And so I think that part of it is really important distinction, because I haven't seen an event where it's very much focused on the people and learning. And so I just want to give you a huge shout out for that.
Yeah, I appreciate that because again, a lot of events you go to them and they're sponsor this, sponsor that, and
Mhm.
all of that. We did have two sponsors this year. Lance Lambert from Resi Club had a couple people reach out to him because
Yeah.
I don't ask I didn't ask for anything, and Lance brought them and so it was nice to have them there. They were in the lobby, Mind and Lending One,
Yeah.
but I'd have done the event without him, right?
Yeah.
That was pretty
And
cool.
I actually still think I went up to Mind, their team, because we're tightly integrated with them from the perspective of, some of our investors are the founders of
Mm.
Roofstock and stuff like that. And so went up to them, and I think it's good to have vendors because it's helpful. It's like, I think there was a question on stage when Lance and I were up there
Mhm.
about lending and rates, and it was like, well, that's not my specialty. I can't
Yeah,
answer that,
that's
but there
over
is
there.
someone who can. So I think it's good that you have the vendors,
Yeah.
but it's not the focus, and it's not the like, hey, we need those sponsors in order to move forward with it.
Mhm.
It's also very different because you didn't, at least from what I saw, you didn't give out a list in advance of who is going. And so the conversations were much more organic because you didn't have a list of, here's like the hit list of
Yeah.
who I want to meet with. It was much more of like, okay, I'm going to go to lunch. And every lunch I went to, I try to sit at a table with
Mhm.
no one that I knew. And if I
Nice.
knew someone, I didn't want to sit with them. But that was really cool because you got to meet so many different people and their different backgrounds and learn something new that you wouldn't have otherwise learned.
Yeah. There's really two things. The hardest thing for me to do and the things that I spent the most hours on for the event was trying to make sure the flow and the agenda was up to expectations.
Mhm.
And the reason that is so difficult, step one, there's two steps here, but step one is what I feel I have to do is I have to show love to the people like yourself who come back every week, and I need to introduce new faces. Right. So it's just not the same people talking each and every
Yeah.
year. And
Yeah.
that is hard. Kind of try to balancing showing love to the people that show up every week and show a nice splash of newness. How did that come across this year?
Well, I thought it was great. I think from the newness perspective, I would love to keep having folks like Dr. Jeff, who talked about recellulite and stem cells and how to live for longer. I think breaking up, if it's all real estate related, it's not like, mindset is part of it. And that was something that I know Chris, one of your attendees, had spoken about, is there's a mindset component to it. And then there's also the finance, like the real estate component and finance, and then economics. So I would encourage there always to be someone who is more on the mindset side. And I think last year you had, totally drawing a blank on his
Adrian
name.
Hernandez.
Adrian, yes. And in this one, it was much more of like the health and fitness and sleep and everything that you took away, and was like, wow, no matter where I am in my real estate journey, was really helpful. And then you brought back some folks that I would say every year you bring back. I think it's always hard to go on Sunday, the last day at the very end, but The Economist.
Yeah,
To
uneducated
basic
economist.
on it. Yes. Like that is one of my favorites because he takes so many terms and just brings them into layman language. I still, have to like write it all down to
Yeah.
remember
Look at that
it.
one.
So I'm like on my phone typing. But I think bringing folks like that every single year never gets boring. And then I think you're right. There's certain folks who are in your community, like Dion, like Millennial Mike, that people want to hear from,
Yeah.
but maybe it's a shorter or not every year, it's combined together so that you can bring in new folks and new speakers. So I thought overall it was really good. And from my perspective, walked away, I learned a lot. And most importantly, I met a lot of people where they were such an inspiration. Like a couple who was like, yeah, we have 3 children. And like we ourselves on our salaries would be living paycheck to paycheck. But, we've had the mindset that it doesn't matter. We're going to buy a home for each one of our children.
I
And
like
that's
it.
going to be a rental property, and certain things like that that are very much inspirational that you can get down to and you relate to them in so many different ways.
Yeah, I love that. And just to kind of celebrate the new names, it's one of the hardest thing is saying, I have to say no to hundreds of people,
Oh,
right?
yeah, I'm sure.
When you get
Yeah.
a list of like, I got 5 spots, people, whatever it is, like the frugal gay. That was a wonderful story talking
Yeah.
about flipping bras and makeup and all of that. We had Jeff and Suleika talking about house hacking, living. I can't imagine Suleika living with 5 guys in one bathroom. That's got to be just crazy. And then the other thing that was a slight risk, but I just knew at my core was the right answer, was to have Dr. Jeff talk about the physical body and then have Fred talk about the mind.
Yeah.
Because again, for me, it was really important to try to give people the tools that they could operate and make their entire life better.
Yes.
So that was a conscious decision, maybe a slight risk because neither was really real estate oriented, but thankfully it landed, and both were wildly well received.
Mm-hmm.
And but still was at least I perceived it as a risk heading in.
It's interesting you perceive it as a risk. I think it would be if you had a whole day of it, but 2 speakers I think is perfect. And honestly, a lot of the real estate stuff, it almost gets to a point where like you can't retain it as much
Yeah.
if it's all real estate related. So it's nice to have a break in
Yep.
between. So I actually found it great. For those listening to this, also last year I could only make one day because it's always my mom's birthday. And this year I made 2, and I actually found it to be a lot more helpful to be there for both days. I walked away one with stronger relationships, and then 2 also with just I took more out of the conference. So I would highly encourage 2 days versus one. One,
Yeah.
you're just frantic trying to get as much content versus being able to just relax and be there. And so it was definitely more helpful to be there for 2 days this time.
Yeah, and also if you only come for day one, you don't really get to see the full vision that I'm trying to lay out with the
Mhm.
flow of the speakers, because they are intended to kind of build and lead to a crescendo. And this year's crescendo obviously was Jason Pritchard, who I thought just crushed it at the end, talking about building that muscle and that confidence. Why
Yeah.
he's on my Mount Rushmore. So pretty cool. So we're gonna see you next year, right?
I'm gonna be there next year. Yes, I need potentially to tell my mom to go to Rwanda again for her
Ah,
birthday, so I can be there for 2 days instead of 1.
you could just bring her with you. You could bring her with you.
I know, actually, that would be a good birthday present for her. So not a
Come to
terrible
Vegas,
idea.
Mom. Come to
Exactly.
Vegas, Mom.
I love it.
You're amazing.
She would be really interested in it, I think, because she's a scientist. And so I think learning about real estate is something that everyone should do, and everyone should go into it and learn a bit more. So I will encourage her to come with me next year.
There you go. Well, thank you for doing this. Thank you for this. This has been a lot of fun. If somebody wanted to look at what Hemlane does, where do they go?
Yeah, you can go to Hemlane, HEMLANE.com. Just so you know, we do property management, so we can help you find and place a tenant, list your property on over 15 of the top listing websites for free, no cost to you. And we have both free and paid packages. So just mention one rental at a time if you do want to use one of those paid packages with 24/7 repair coordination and everything else for your rentals.
There you go. Take care. Thank you so much.